Welcome back to Hardball. In one way or another, nearly every American family has been touched by addiction, whether it involves alcohol, gambling, nicotine, or drugs. And whether the addict is under your roof or somehow intertwined in your life, you're affected. And the Kennedy family is no different from others. In that respect, Christopher Kennedy Lawford has written a new book to help addicts and their families. It's called Recover to Live, Kick Any Habit, Manage Any Addiction. He's joined here by his cousin, former Rhode Island Congressman Patrick Kennedy, a pal of ours. And thank you both for coming in. You've written a book here. A lot of useful information besides your own personal story. What were your problems personally? What history do you have?
I started using drugs when I was 12. I had genetic front loading. I also had trauma. And we know from the studies at NIH that these two things together make you a real candidate for this disease. This book has the best information on the planet today for people who have this illness and people who don't, or people who think they might, or know somebody.
When do you know you're an addict? Some people call themselves social drinkers, heavy drinkers. When do you reach the point where you say, I can't control this without doing something?
It's a cost-benefit thing. It's how much harm is this behavior causing you in your life, and do you want to change it? If you're the only one that can really make that diagnosis, and it depends on how much harm. If there's enough harm and you're willing to make some changes, you can pick up this book and you can get the information that you need.
Your family, Patrick, yourself, your brothers. I mean, you lost a brother, David, down in Florida to that overdose, you know.
My cousin David, yes.
And it had an impact probably on other brothers and your cousins like Michael, and who knows what influence it had. Your mom had the problem. I mean, some of it's your family, some of it's just you.
But you know what? I had the honor of sponsoring the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act with my father. And for me, it was a great personal vindication that I got to sponsor a bill that said you ought to treat mental illness as an addiction the same way you treat every other physical illness, even though my dad was old school and looked at it as kind of a character flaw.
Yeah.
And that's the way America looks at it these days. We still have to come to that realization these are chemistry issues, not character issues.
You know, Tim O'Neill, my old boss, looked at it that way, and he had problems in his family. His father was a teetotaler, but his uncle had the problem. His brother died, had the problem of alcohol, and he had a child who had the problem with drugs too, and yet he always saw it as a discipline problem. What is that? How do you change that?
Well, Obamacare is going to implement uniform health care that includes your brain. Everything, a checkup from the neck up. You know, your mental health is going to be checked just like your blood pressure and your lipids for high cholesterol.
Okay, we're talking to people out there who have somebody. Suppose your wife out there watching, your husband's drinking right now. Too much.
Too much. Well, the issue becomes...
Buy the book.
Yeah, well, buy the book. There's a lot of good... I interviewed 150 of the smartest people on the planet about what this disease is and what to do about it. There's assessment tools in here. There are tools that can show you a way to recovery. This is the neuroscience that we know today. The brain science that we're getting today is irrefutable. This is a disease that centers in the brain. People can't deny it. Tip O'Neill, they didn't have the science back then.
What happens when you have family members, 4 or 5 family members, and they all grow up the same way with the same parents, and only one gets hit by it? How do you explain that?
It's a tricky illness. I mean, there's one gene in your body that determines whether you're lactose intolerant. There's 20 genes that they've identified that have something to do with the way alcohol is metabolized in your body. We just don't know. You can't ignore the complex interplay between biology and environment when it comes to this illness.
What about the ethnic factor? We always talk about the Irish or the American, Native American Indians. Is it a lack of tolerance? What's the term? Is there a term for it? Or is that just legacy?
No. There's a genetic factor and there's an environmental factor. But the bottom line is we know how to deal with this. Prevention, prevention, prevention. Yeah. 9 out of 10 addicts started when they were teenagers. If the brain is still developing and you hijack it with the use of experimentation of marijuana, drugs, you're permanently...
You don't like these laws legalizing marijuana?
No, I don't. I think that we need the public health community to be weigh in here, because we already know what the liquor industry and the tobacco industry have done to our country in targeting kids. And so we need to be mindful, not rush into this.
Like Joe Camel, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Joe Camel, we're to liquor stores. Liquor stores are in places where you know that there are people who are going to abuse liquor and are going to have easy access, are going to be...
Well, now that I have the Kennedys here, this is too hot. The hottest topic in this country right now is gun safety. Your family's been victimized. This whole country, because your family being victims, we're all victims. What is your feeling about it?
Well, it's not just the person that's killed, like my uncles. It's the whole family. So my father survived, but I can tell you he had post-traumatic stress, and that communicated itself to me. He was in mourning the rest of his life. He suffered tremendously. And all of my cousins who grew up without a father were also victims.
Yeah.
And that's what we lose sight of. It's not just the kids that are killed up in Newtown or out in Colorado. It's all their families who are also victims.
And it's a generation.
Well, that's well said, Patty. Thank you for coming on. And the book, you're a good guy here, Richard.
Thanks.
I mean, Christopher, that's my name. Anyway, the book's called Recover to Live. Kick any habit, manage any addiction. Very useful book. We don't usually sell books you can use on this program, but I think this one is people that know what we're talking about. And you all know who you are. You know, our family knows this too. I know it too. Christopher Kennedy Lawford, Patrick Kennedy, thank you. We'll be right back after this.
Thank you, Chris.
Let me finish tonight with this. I never stop wondering why people think drinking is too much. Well, it's actually a joke, drinking too much. How can something that ruins lives be the subject of such rich humor? Like I say this as someone who believes alcohol is a disease. I'm not saying people aren't responsible for drinking too much, just that at a certain point, which can come early, a person is no longer in control. It's then that either the person stops drinking or the drinking stops the person, and for good. I'm glad we had Christopher Lawford on tonight. He shows that the problem of addiction is not limited to the down and out. The richest and most glamorous of people are subject to it, sometimes more often because people born to privilege can get the idea they're immune to the dangers others face. Alcohol and drugs can destroy not just ambition, but lives and families. Telling jokes about it may have given us some laughs over the decades, but for every comedy, there's been more than one tragedy.